You've been conditioned to believe that loneliness is a disease and connection is the cure. Society has programmed you to feel broken when you're alone, incomplete when you're not constantly engaging with others. This propaganda of perpetual partnership has created a generation of spiritual cripples, people who can't walk their own path because they're too busy clinging to others for support. The most dangerous relationship you have isn't with any toxic person in your life. It's with your own fear of being alone. That fear is the invisible ceiling above every dream you've ever had. You know what fascinates me most about eagles? They fly alone. Not in flocks like geese or starlings, but alone, soaring high above the world, seeing what others can't see, reaching heights others can't reach. And here's the thing, no one ever pities an eagle for being alone. No one ever says, oh, that poor eagle. It must be so lonely up there. Because that solitude, that independence, that's its power. Let me tell you something that might shake you to your core. Your fear of being alone is costing you everything. Everything. Your greatest dreams, your deepest potential, your true purpose, all of it sits on the other side of that fear. And today, right here, right now, we're going to confront that fear together. I see you shifting in your seats. Some of you are already feeling uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort, it's the first sign of growth. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just another talk about success or achievement. This is about something far more fundamental. It's about your relationship with yourself. Have you ever noticed how we've created a world where being alone is somehow wrong? Where if you're not constantly surrounded by people, constantly connected, constantly engaging, something must be wrong with you? We built a society that's addicted to companionship, addicted to noise, addicted to distraction. And in this addiction, we've lost something precious. Think about the last time you were truly alone. Not alone with your phone, not alone with Netflix, not alone with social media, just alone. With your thoughts, your dreams, your fears, can't remember. You're not alone in that irony? Most people can't. Here's a truth that might sex. The most successful people in any field have mastered the art of being alone. They've learned to embrace solitude not as a punishment, but as a privilege. They understand that the greatest innovations, the deepest insights, the most profound breakthroughs, they all happen in moments of solitude. But let's get real for a moment. This isn't about becoming a hermit. This isn't about cutting yourself off from the world. This is about developing a relationship with yourself that's so strong, so unshakable, that you don't need constant external validation to know your worth. You see, when you learn to be alone, really alone, something magical happens. The voice in your head that's always seeking approval starts to quiet down. The need to constantly check what others are doing begins to fade. The fear of missing out transforms into the joy of standing out. I once met someone who changed their entire life by simply learning to eat alone at restaurants. Simple, right? But for them, it was revolutionary. They told me, for the first time in my life, I stopped eating what others wanted, when others wanted, where others wanted. I started listening to my own hunger, not just for food, but for life. This is where transformation begins, in these small moments of chosen solitude. When you choose to go to that art gallery alone, take that class alone, start that project alone. You're not just doing activities, you're building a relationship with. But here's what most people get wrong about being alone. They think it's about isolation. It's not. It's about liberation. When you can walk into a room full of people and feel completely at peace, being the only one standing alone, that's not loneliness. Think about every great leader you admire. Every innovator who changed the world. Every artist who created something unprecedented. Yes, they might have had teams, supporters, followers, but the vision, the initial spark, the courage to be different, that came from moments of solitude. That came from being comfortable enough with themselves to stand alone in their convictions. The coffee shop around the corner from my house has a regular customer. Every morning, same time. She comes in alone. She brings a notebook, orders her coffee, and spends an hour writing. People often ask her why she doesn't meet friends there instead. Her response, "This is my meeting with myself. It's the most important meeting of my day." That's what I'm talking about. That level of self-connection, that understanding that the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. But let's address the fear. Because I can feel it in the room, the fear that if you start doing things alone, you'll end up lonely. The fear that if you start enjoying your own company too much, others won't want yours. The fear that there's something wrong with wanting to be alone. These fears are natural, but they're based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Being alone and being lonely are two completely different things. Loneliness is feeling isolated even in a crowd. Solitude is feeling complete even when no one else is. The irony is, once you master being alone, your relationships with others actually improve. Why? Because you're no longer coming from a place of need. You're coming from a place of wholeness. You're not looking for others to complete you. You're looking to share your completeness with. I want you to try something right now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. In this moment, you are alone with yourself. How does that feel? Does it make you uncomfortable? Do you have an urge to reach for your phone? To distract yourself? To escape this moment of pure self-connection? These reactions are telling you something important about your relationship with yourself. They're showing you where your work the journey to success, real, lasting, fulfilling success, starts with this relationship. It starts with being able to sit with yourself, to face yourself, to be yourself without the constant need for external validation or distraction. Think about the most important decisions in your life. Should you really make them based on other people's opinions? Should your dreams be shaped by what makes others comfortable? Should your potential be limited by who's willing to join you on your journey? The answer is staring you in the face, but for many of you, it's the hardest thing to accept. The most important steps in your journey will be steps you have to take alone. This is where true leadership begins. Not with managing others, but with managing yourself. Not with influencing others, but with being immune to their influence when it doesn't serve your truth. Let me share something powerful with you. Success leaves clues, and one of the biggest clues is successful people are comfortable with being uncomfortable. They're comfortable with being the only one doing what they're doing. They're comfortable with being misunderstood. They're comfortable with being alone. Look at any field. Business, arts, science, sports. The breakthrough moments don't happen in committee meetings. They happen in moments of solitude. They happen when someone is brave enough to step away from the crowd, brave enough to think their own thoughts, brave enough to chart their own course. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you learn to be alone, you discover you're never really alone. You're in the company of every innovator, every creator, every leader who dared to step away from the crowd. You're in the company of your authentic self, perhaps for the first time in your life. The world is full of people living lives they didn't choose, following paths they didn't design, pursuing dreams that aren't even theirs. Why? Because they never learned to be alone. They never developed the strength to stand apart. They never gave themselves the chance to discover who they really are when no one else is watching. This is your chance, right here, right now. This is your moment to decide. Will you continue to let your fear of being alone hold you back? Or will you embrace solitude as the superpower it truly is? Start small if you need to. Take yourself to lunch. Go to a movie alone. Take a walk without your phone. Sit in a coffee shop without distractions. These aren't just activities. They're declarations of independence. They're statements to yourself and to the world that you are complete, whole, and capable on your own. The world needs more people who have found their own voice, not more echoes. It needs more people who can stand alone in their truth, not more followers. It needs more people who have mastered themselves, not more masters of others. Every great journey begins with leaving something behind. Sometimes what you need to leave behind is the belief that you can't do it alone. Sometimes it's the comfort of conformity. Sometimes it's the approval of others. What you'll find on the other side of that leaving is worth everything. You'll find strengths you never knew you had. You'll find peace you never thought possible. You'll find success that comes from authentic power, not borrowed confidence. This is just the beginning. In the next part of our journey together, we'll explore how this mastery of solitude translates into unstoppable momentum in every area of your life. We'll discover how being comfortable alone becomes your greatest competitive advantage. We'll learn how solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your prison. But for now, I want you to sit with this truth. Your fear of being alone is the only thing standing between you and everything you've ever wanted. The question is, are you ready to face that fear? Are you ready to embrace the power of solitude? Are you ready to discover who you really are when no one else is watching? Because that person, that strong, independent, authentic person, that's who you were always meant to be. That's who the world is waiting for. That's who success is waiting for. And it all begins with learning to be alone. Let me tell you about the mornings. The quiet, sacred mornings when the world is still asleep and you're awake with your dreams. This is where it all begins. This precious time that belongs only to you. No phones ringing. No emails demanding attention. No voices telling you what you should or shouldn't do. Just you, your thoughts, and endless possibility. You see, success isn't just about what you do. It's about who you become in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It's about the conversations you have with yourself when the rest of the world is silent. These moments of solitude aren't empty spaces to be filled. They're fertile ground where your greatest achievements take root. Think about the way most people live their lives. They wake up and immediately reach for their phone, desperately seeking connection, validation, distraction. They fill every moment with noise because they're afraid of what they might hear in the silence. They surround themselves with people because they're afraid of what they might find in solitude. But here's what they don't understand. Everything you're looking for lives in those quiet moments. Every answer you need, every solution you seek, every breakthrough you desire, it's all waiting for you in the space between the noise. Let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable: decision-making. How many of your decisions are truly yours? How many are influenced by the constant noise around you, the opinions of others, the pressure to conform, the fear of standing out? When was the last time you made a decision in complete solitude, listening only to your own inner wisdom? This is where the magic happens. When you learn to be alone with your thoughts, when you develop the strength to trust your own judgment, when you build the confidence to chart your own course, that's when everything changes. I want you to consider something profound. Every major breakthrough in human history came from someone who was willing to stand alone in their vision. Every innovation that changed the world started with someone who was comfortable being misunderstood. Every revolution began with someone who was willing to walk alone. But let's get practical for a moment. How do you build this strength? How do you develop this comfort with solitude? It starts with small steps, daily practices that might seem insignificant, but are actually transformative. Start with your morning routine. Can you spend the first hour of your day completely alone, no phone, no TV, no radio, no external input, just you, your thoughts, and your intentions for the day? This isn't about meditation or mindfulness, though those are powerful practices. This is about building a relationship with yourself. When you first try this, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will resist. It will create reasons why you need to check your phone, why you need to start your day with the news, why you need to immediately connect with others. Notice these thoughts. They're showing you exactly where your dependencies lie. These dependencies on external validation, on constant connection, on endless distraction. They're not just habits. They're chains. They're the very things holding you back from your true potential. Think about the greatest athletes in the world. Yes, they have teams. Yes, they have coaches. But what sets them apart is the hours they spend alone in the gym when no one is watching. It's early mornings and late nights when they're the only one practicing. It's their willingness to be alone with their craft, their dedication, their vision. The same principle applies to every field. Writers write alone. Artists create alone. Entrepreneurs often work alone in the early stages of their vision. This solitude isn't a burden, it's a prerequisite for greatness. But here's what most people get wrong about this journey. They think it's about becoming hard, becoming cold, becoming distant. It's not. It's about becoming whole. When you learn to be alone, you're not learning to be without others, you're learning to be complete within. This completeness, this wholeness, it changes everything. It changes how you show up in relationships. It changes how you make decisions. It changes how you pursue your goals. Because when you're no longer dependent on others for your safety. Let me share something powerful with you. The difference between reaction and response. When you're constantly surrounded by others, constantly connected, constantly seeking input, you're in a state of reaction. You're letting the world dictate your moves, your mood, your decisions. But when you develop comfort with solitude, you learn to respond rather than react. You create space between stimulus and response. You develop the ability to pause, to reflect, to choose your path, rather than simply following the path of leaders. This is where true power lies. Not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself, not in having all the answers, but in having the strength to sit with the questions. Not in being right all the time, but in being true to yourself all the time. Consider this. Every time you choose solitude, you're making a deposit in your personal power bank. Every time you resist the urge to seek validation from others, you're building your internal strength. Every time you trust your own judgment, you're developing your leadership capacity, but there's something even more profound happening in these moments of chosen solitude. And you're developing what I call soul stamina, the ability to stay true to yourself, even when the whole world seems to be pulling you in different directions. Think about the last time you had a controversial opinion. Did you share it? Did you stand by it? Or did you look around to see what others thought first? Did you wait for validation before speaking your truth? This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where your practice of solitude transforms into real-world strengths. When you're comfortable being alone, you become comfortable being different. When you're at peace with solitude, you become at peace with standing out. When you're confident in your own company, you become confident in your own convictions. This is the kind of strength that changes not just your life, but the lives of others. Because when you develop this level of internal power, you become a lighthouse for others. You show them what's possible. You demonstrate what it looks like to be truly free. But remember, this journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about peeling away the layers of social conditioning, external expectations, and borrowed beliefs until you find your authentic core. In these moments of solitude, you're not just building strength, you're building clarity. You're developing the ability to distinguish between your own thoughts and the thoughts you've absorbed from others. Your own desires and the desires others have projected onto you. Your own path and the path others have laid out for you. This clarity, it's priceless. Because in a world of endless noise, endless options, endless distractions, knowing your own mind becomes your greatest asset. Being able to hear your own voice becomes your greatest strength. Trusting your own judgment becomes your greatest advantage. The ocean teaches us something profound about solitude. On the surface, waves crash and collide, but deep beneath, there's a stillness that remains undisturbed. That's what we're really talking about here. Finding that deep, unwavering center within yourself that no external storm can disturb. You know what's fascinating about success? It's not just about what you achieve. It's about what you're willing to give up. And one of the biggest sacrifices successful people make isn't what you might. It's not money. It's not time. It's not effort. It's the need to be understood by everyone. Let that sink in for a moment. The need to be understood by everyone. This need keeps more people stuck than almost anything else. Because here's the truth. When you're doing something truly innovative, truly different, truly transformative, most people, they can't. They don't have your vision. They don't see what you see. And that's where your practice of solitude becomes your superpower. Because when you've learned to be alone, when you've developed that deep relationship with yourself, other people's lack of understanding doesn't shake you. Their doubt doesn't deter you. Their confusion doesn't confuse you. Think about the Wright brothers working in their bicycle shop. Think about the first person who decided to plant seeds in the ground and wait for them to grow. Think about the first person who looked at a blank canvas and saw a masterpiece waiting to emerge. They all had one thing in common. They were willing to look crazy for a while. But here's what most people miss about this journey. It's not about becoming immune to others. It's about becoming so deeply connected to your own truth that other opinions take their proper place in your life. They become information, not direction. They become feedback, not commands. Let me share something powerful with you about the relationship between solitude and creativity. When you're constantly in the presence of others, constantly consuming their thoughts, their ideas, their perspectives, you're like a cup that's already full. There's no room for anything new to emerge. But in solitude, you create space. You empty your cup. And that's when the magic happens. Have you ever noticed how your best ideas come when you're alone? In the shower? On a solitary walk? During a quiet moment in the early morning? That's not a coincidence. That's your mind finally having the space it needs to create, to innovate, to break through. But there's a deeper level to this that we need to talk about. It's not just about having good ideas, it's about having the courage to act on them. And that courage, it comes from the strength you build in solitude. When you learn to be alone, you develop what I call soul certainties. That deep, unshakable, knowing that comes not from external validation, but from internal alignment. This is the kind of certainty that doesn't need constant reinforcement. It doesn't need daily approval. It doesn't need everyone to agree. Think about the last time you had a great idea. What did you do with it? Did you immediately share it with others, hoping for their approval? Did you water it down to make it more acceptable? Did you let other people's doubts become your doubts? This is where most dreams die. In the space between having an idea and having the courage to act on it alone. Because make no mistake, the initial steps of any worthy endeavor are often solitary steps. The first person who has to believe in your dream is you. The first person who has to act on your vision is you. The first person who has to be willing to look foolish is you. But here's the beautiful thing about developing this strength through solitude. It becomes cumulative. Every time you trust yourself, every time you act on your own wisdom, every time you stay true to your vision, despite doubts and opposition, you're building what I call your truth muscles. These truth muscles are what allow you to stand firm when everyone else is wavering. They're what allow you to keep going when everyone else has given up. They're what allow you to break through when everyone else is still trying to break in. Let me tell you something about breakthrough moments. They rarely come when we're seeking consensus. They rarely come when we're trying to please everyone. They rarely come when we're following the crowd. They come in those moments of solitary clarity when we're brave enough to listen to our own wisdom and act on it. But there's something even more powerful that happens when you master solitude. You develop what I call presence immunity, the ability to maintain your center regardless of who's in the room. Think about how valuable that is, to be able to walk into any room, any situation, any circumstance, and remain truly yourself. Most people are like chameleons. You constantly changing their colors to match their environment. They're one person at work, another person at home, another person with friends, another person on social media. But when you've mastered solitude, you develop the strength to be consistently yourself across all. This consistency, this authenticity, it's magnetic. It draws people to you. Not because you're trying to attract them, but because authentic power is the most attractive force in the universe. When you're truly comfortable alone, paradoxically, you never have to be alone unless you choose to be. But remember this, the goal isn't to become some kind of lone wolf. The goal isn't to disconnect from humanity. The goal is to develop such a strong connection with yourself that your connections with others become choices rather than necessities. Pure expressions rather than desperate attempts to fill a void. Think about the difference between a needy friend and a self-sufficient friend. Which one do you trust more? Which one do you respect more? Which one do you value more? When you master solitude, you become the friend you'd want to have, the leader you'd want to follow, the person you'd want to be. This is where true influence begins. Not with techniques or strategies or methods, but with the authentic power that comes from being so deeply grounded in yourself that you naturally lift others up. You don't have to try to be inspiring. You're inspiring simply by being who you are. But here's the part that might surprise you. This journey never ends. The practice of solitude isn't something you master once and then move on from. It's a daily choice, a daily practice, a daily recommitment to your own growth and truth. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. Will you immediately reach for connection, for distraction, for noise, or will you give yourself the gift of solitude? Will you take that time to reconnect with yourself, to clarify your vision? There's something profound about mountains that few people talk about. It's not their height, not their majesty, not their challenges. It's their silence. Stand on a mountain peak, and you'll experience a silence so deep it speaks. That's the kind of silence we need to cultivate in our lives. Silence that speaks wisdom, silence that reveals truth, silence that transforms. You see, we live in a world that's afraid of silence. We've created an environment where constant noise isn't just normal, it's expected. But here's what nobody tells you about success. It speaks in whispers. Your deepest insights, your most powerful realizations, your breakthrough moments, they don't come in the noise. They come in the silence. Let me share something with you about the relationship between solitude and power. True power, not the kind that comes from position or status, but the kind that comes from within. It's built in moments when no one's watching. It's developed in those quiet spaces between the noise, in those moments when you choose to stand alone. Think about water for a moment. When it's turbulent, when it's stirred up, it becomes cloudy. You can't see through it. But when it's still, it becomes clear. Everything settles. You can see straight to the bottom. That's what solitude does for your mind, for your vision, for your purpose. But here's what most people don't understand about this journey. It's not just about finding clarity. It's about developing what I call sovereign strengths, the kind of strength that doesn't need constant external reinforcement. The kind of strength that remains steady regardless of what's happening around you. Have you ever watched a tree in a storm? The leaves shake, the branches sway, but the trunk, the core, remains unmoved. That's what we're really talking about here. Building a core so strong that you can bend without breaking, adapt without losing yourself, grow without compromising your roots. Let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable. The difference between being alone and being lonely. Being lonely is feeling like something's missing. Being alone is discovering what's already there. Being lonely is an absence. Being alone is a presence. Being lonely is a void to be filled. Being alone is a space to be explored. Most people spend their entire lives running from loneliness, and in doing so, they never discover the power of being alone. They never give themselves a chance to discover who they really are when no one else is around. They never develop the strength that comes from keeping their own counsel. Think about the last major decision you made. Where did you make it? In a committee? In a meeting? Or in those quiet moments when you could finally hear your own wisdom? The most powerful decisions, the ones that change the trajectory of your life, they're rarely made in crowds. They're made in solitude. But here's what's fascinating about this journey. As you develop this strength, this comfort with solitude, something unexpected happens. Your relationships actually improve. Why? Because you're no longer approaching relationships. You're approaching them from a place of wholeness. When you're comfortable being alone, you develop what I call relational sovereignty, the ability to be fully present with others while maintaining your own center. You don't lose yourself in relationships. You don't compromise your truth for connection. And you don't sacrifice your wisdom for acceptance. This is where true leadership begins. Not with managing others, but with mastering yourself. Not with controlling circumstances, but with maintaining your center regardless of circumstances. Not with having all the answers, but with being comfortable not knowing. Let me tell you something about uncertainty. It's not your enemy. Uncertainty is the space where possibilities live. But to access those possibilities, you need to be comfortable standing alone in the unknown. You need to be willing to be the only one who sees what you see, who believes what you believe, who's willing to go where you're called to go. Think about every major innovation in history. At some point, someone had to be willing to stand alone in their vision. Someone had to be willing to look foolish. Someone had to be willing to say, this is what I see, even if no one else sees it yet. But here's the key. They didn't just have a vision. They had the strength to hold that vision alone until it manifested. They had the courage to stand in their truth even when no one else understood. They had what I call visionary solitude, the ability to be alone with their vision until the world caught. This is where most dreams die. Not because they're impossible, but because people don't have the strength to hold them alone. They need too much validation. They need too much understanding. They need too much agreement. And in needing all of that, they water down their vision until it's acceptable to everyone. But when you develop this strength, when you master this solitude, something magical happens. You become unstoppable. Not because you're better than others, but because you're no longer dependent on others for your sense of direction, your sense of purpose, your sense of worth. Think about the difference between a tree and a vine. A vine needs something to grow on. It needs external support. But a tree grows from its own center. It creates its own support. It reaches toward the sky, not because something's pulling it up, but because That's its nature. That's what we're really talking about here, and becoming like that tree. Growing from your own center, drawing strength from your own roots, reaching for your dreams not because someone else believes in them, but because they're authentically yours. But let me be clear about something. This isn't about becoming hard or cold. This isn't about shutting others out. This is about developing such a strong center that you can remain open without losing yourself. This is about building such deep roots that you can reach out without falling over. Consider this. Every great teacher, every great leader, every great innovator had one thing in common. They had a relationship with solitude. They knew how to be alone with their thoughts, alone with their vision, alone with their truth. They knew how to maintain their center, even when the whole world was pulling them in different directions. This is the kind of strength we're building here. Not the strength to stand against the world, but the strength to stand firmly in your truth regardless of what the world is doing. Not the strength to fight, but the strength to remain steady. Not the strength to impose your will, but the strength to live your truth.